Hello and welcome to our latest webinar of 2021. We hope you've been enjoying some of this early summer weather as we have been here recently. My name is Darren Lewis. I'm I4I's Manager of Client and Regulatory Services, and I'll be giving the introduction for today. And then, once again, my colleagues Jacqueline Bruner and Amanpreet Kantz will be giving today's presentation. For today's webinar, we're continuing our XML PM Fundamentals theme. And we'll be covering general workflow principles of XML PM creation, including translations and how to handle variant or parallel labeling edits. All of these topics, which will help you author and manage your PM content and then submit the XML PMs. There's a lot of information to cover, and once we get through that, we'll then have a Q&A session to follow. Please note this presentation is being recorded and the recording will be made available to all registered attendees. Also, it might take a moment or two to hand off the presentation from one speaker to another, so bear with us if there are any pauses in between. I know that once again, many of you have already attended some of our webinars in the past, so thank you for your continued interest. Before we start off, just a bit of WebEx housekeeping. During the webinar, all microphones will start off being muted except for the presenters. If you do experiencing an echo, check that your mic has been muted in the WebEx window. The microphone icon should be red and have a cross through it. If the echo persists and you're using a phone for your audio, please make sure your audio devices are muted on your computer. At the end of today's presentation, time should allow us to answer any questions you might have. To participate in the Q&A session, if you have a question at any point during the webinar, please type it into the chat area of the WebEx window. To send a chat, click the chat button, then choose host from the dropdown. Enter your question in the chat message area. If you don't see a chat icon, click the view menu and select show meeting controls option. We'll do our best to answer any and all questions that we get, but if we don't have the answer for you live, we'll contact you afterwards with a follow-up. Okay, that's it from me. To get things started, I'll hand the virtual microphone over to my colleague, Jacqueline Bruner.
Thank you very much, Darren, and hello, everyone. Today's presentation is a follow-up presentation to our XML PM Fundamentals Part 1 webinar from a few weeks back. For those of you who are not in attendance at our last webinar, we're going to do a quick recap of the topics we discussed last time. And my colleague Amanpreet Kantz and I will go over several topics that build upon our previous webinar, and these include controlled vocabularies, document management and XML PMs, workflows, variants, language and translation. And we'll finish the content portion of the webinar by sharing some updates we've received from Health Canada. And finally, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. As I mentioned on the previous slide, today's presentation is a follow-up to our XML PM Fundamentals Part 1 webinar. And in this section, we're going to briefly touch on the topics we discussed last time before we move on to the new topics that we want to highlight this time. First off, who needs to make the move to XML PM? You'll need to transition to XML PM if you have a new drug submission. If you have an abbreviated new drug submission or a supplement to an abbreviated new drug submission and the Canadian reference product is already in the 2020 format, you will need to submit in the XML PM format. And for supplements to new drug submissions, you'll need to submit in the XML PM format if there are changes proposed to the format or content. And why is Health Canada moving to XML PM, and why should you? Health Canada is making this move to be able to deliver some key benefits that are not possible with plain Word documents. And these benefits are searchability, innovation, and consistency. On the left, we have a product monograph that is not structured. And on the right, we have an XML PM that is structured. The unstructured product monograph is composed of text, images, tables, links, and lists. However, since there isn't any documentational structure or metadata included in this product monograph, the entire document must be read and assessed by a human, which takes time and is prone to errors. The XML PM here currently doesn't have any content in it, so it's easier to show you the structure. And you can see that each section of the document has standard text, such as for the section title, and it's a place where body content, such as narrative text, images, tables, links, and lists can go. And with A4L, you can import your existing unstructured product monographs and convert them into the structured XML PM. Now, what makes an XML PM structured? Well, the answer is right in the name. XML PMs use the Extensible Markup Language, or XML, to enforce Health Canada's predefined structure on the product monograph. Some of these structural elements include the order of sections and the standardized heading naming and numbering. Another key aspect of XML PMs is that the metadata values can be embedded into the document. This can include any data about the document, such as the document type, the author, identifiers, etc. But it can also store values such as product details, company information, and controlled vocabularies. And that brings us very nicely into our first new topic in today's webinar, which is controlled vocabularies. You can think of a controlled vocabulary as a way to give everyone exactly the same set of words to use. Reducing to a common set of words and removing synonyms improves the indexing and searchability of information. Basically, a controlled vocabulary is a list of words or phrases that are used to initially tag content and then later to find that content through a controlled search. For example, suppose you wanted to find something scary to watch on a streaming service like Netflix, Disney Plus, or Amazon Prime. You can type the word scary in the search field, and you're going to get a comedy called Scary Movie, and a comedy is exactly what you are not looking for. However, if you select the genre horror, you'll get a lot of options that are right up your alley. The genre category is a type of controlled vocabulary, and in this case, it helps limit your search results to the genre you're interested in. But by deciding to control the name of a group of like movies, they remove the ambiguity of synonyms such as scary or frightening or nightmarish. Everyone refers to this group as horror. Furthermore, it eliminates the possibility of someone making a typo, entering SCARRY instead of SCARY. The controlled vocabularies used by Health Canada offer even more precision. The metadata for dosage forms, routes of administration, therapeutic class, and ingredient names are just some of the categories that use controlled vocabulary values, making it easy to enter values and hard to enter values incorrectly, so you'd have no fear of spelling mistakes. As well, it means that every XML PM uses the same values for the metadata, which eliminates the problem of synonyms. If a controlled vocabulary were not used, you could have two labels describing the same dosage form in different ways, tablet versus pill, for example, and that would reduce searchability. Every term in the Health Canada controlled vocabularies has a code, and each code maps to both an English and a French term. The pairing of a code and a document language gives you the value for the code. For example, the code 102.19000 in the dosage form controlled vocabulary maps to the term tablet in English and to comprimé in French. Both the French and the English XML PMs would use the same code, but with different text values to reflect the language. We all have our own approaches to managing and organizing documents in our local drives, and of course some are more successful than others. But using structured documents in a content management system means that your files are always at your fingertips. You can store any document in a document management system, plain Word files, images, PDFs, etc. However, XML allows you to unleash the full potential of managing documents because of the structure, both the structure of the document and the structured metadata. Structure allows you to organize your documents in a logical hierarchy based on preferred metadata. For example, you could have the product name as the key concept with the jurisdictions within it. You could have another view of the same data, but with a therapeutic class as the key concept and the products within each one. And this allows users to locate files based on the concept that is most relevant to them. Metadata in the documents allows you to easily search on any property or combination of properties, such as brand name, DIN, therapeutic class, etc. A property-driven user interface gives you a quick look into all the valuable metadata of each document in one convenient place. And then there's the impact and dependency analysis for related documents. If a change is made to one document, you can easily see the other documents that might need to be updated. And we're going to discuss all of these concepts in the context of Alice, which is i4i's content management system. The first step to being able to utilize all of the rich metadata held in XML PM files is to get the files into the document management system. When you check an XML PM file to Alice, the metadata is automatically pulled out and stored. When you update your file, the metadata is again automatically updated. Once your XML PM is checked into Alice, you have lots of information available about your products and files without even having to open them. The folder structure is customizable and allows you to drill down into your favorite hierarchical views. You're not limited to any one way to arrange your files. The folder structures allow you to view the same files in multiple different hierarchies, such as the example I gave earlier, reviewing files by product and also by therapeutic class. With Alice, the metadata allows you to view the same files in both locations. And unlike the folder structures on your desktop, your files are automatically gathered into the folders. Each folder is actually a query or a search. There's no more losing files, and there's no need to store duplicate files in different places. A regular file system shows you basic file properties like the date, the file name, and the file size. The metadata stored in the XML PM files allows you to see more interesting properties in Alice, such as the dosage form, the brand name, or the active ingredient. And Alice provides a snapshot of all the key metadata in one place, so you don't need to open the file to see it. As you can see, the structured metadata allows you to quickly assess your documents. And as mentioned earlier, each folder is actually a search or a query. The query collects the files that meet the criteria into a folder. You can also do arbitrary searches for files at any time. As you can see here, the list of metadata available to you to search on is quite long and exhaustive, allowing you to pinpoint exactly what you're looking for. Having the documents so well organized in the system makes it easy to find and edit them directly. When you check a document out, it's locked for editing only by you. You can access the documents, but you can also directly access and edit the metadata. The document content and the metadata can be opened and edited separately, but they're still part of the same XML PM. This means that one person can edit the document, while another person can edit the metadata, and that can be done in parallel. And Alice tracks the document history and check-ins on both the document and the metadata separately. Finally, when you're making changes to a document, you might want to see what other documents could be impacted. And this is especially true of XML PMs, because you have two documents to manage. You have the English and you have the French. When changes are made to one document, you need to be ensured that the related language document is also updated. You can view all related documents in the Alice interface. Note that the system also has some built-in features for related documents. For example, it can ensure that the document structure and metadata align between the two language versions, so everything is kept in sync. Now we're going to move along to talk about document workflow and show you how documents with structure make workflow management easier and more precise. Structured documents provide many benefits when it comes to workflow. For example, each document class can have a different workflow. XML PM documents that contain content of labeling might have a more stringent workflow with more checks and balances than a non-XML PM document that contains only manufacturing addresses. Checks can be put in place throughout a complex workflow to ensure that documents meet certain criteria before they can be promoted in the system. For example, a check can be put in place to ensure that a file does not contain track changes or comments before its merge is approved. The workflow can enforce document signing requirements. For example, if a document has not been signed by an approved user, the workflow can prevent it from being promoted to internally approved. And finally, if information is missing from a file, such as a DIN number or therapeutic class, the system can prevent the file from being submitted. Document workflows can be as complex or simple as required, and as mentioned earlier, different document classes can have differing workflows. Here's a very basic document workflow. In this workflow, the document starts in draft, and when the content's finished, it's promoted to the review stage. The review stage, in this example, requires a signature in order to move it to the ready for publishing stage. We've only got one signature required in this simplified life cycle, but you might want more than one in yours. From ready for publishing, you can promote to submitted and generate a submission for the health authority and promote it to the latest effective document. Note that each stage of the workflow is tracked so you know exactly who did what throughout. As well, each stage can be managed by different users. And this chart shows an example of the different user groups and permissions that they could have along the workflow stream. In this example, users that are defined as authors can edit and promote documents throughout most of the life cycle. However, the reviewer users mainly have read-only access to the documents, except when they're in the review state. And the user defined to work with metadata has read-only access except when the document is in the metadata update state. As you can see, workflows and the permissions associated with them can be very detailed and precise, and that's all due to the power of structured data. I'd like to hand it over now to my colleague, Aman Preet, to talk about variants and translation in the context of XML PM. Take it away, Aman.
Thank you, Jacqueline. And hello, everyone. The management of document variants is something I know most of us have struggled with. How do you manage multiple variations of a file and deal with parallel submissions with the health authority? And how do you merge multiple variations of a file back into one? Structure gives us the opportunity to create multiple copies of a document and also manage them independently. Each variant document can have an independent workflow, and variants, once approved, can be merged back into the last effective submission. This is useful when you have multiple parallel submissions or supplements in progress that will be submitted to the health authority at staggered times. Let's look at an example. Consider a situation in which a new indication is being added to an approved XML PM document, and as we are working on the new indication, a new safety update comes in. Let's walk through the entire scenario. To add your new indication, you would likely create a variant or a branch document from the approved XML PM or the base document. Why do we create the branch document? It's because we expect that we might have other updates that will need to be done within a tight deadline. And we know that adding a new indication is a time-consuming process involving a lot of back and forth. By creating a variant or a copy, we ensure that this document can continue to undergo its regular updates without hindering the overall process. This variant document is updated with the new indication information and then undergoes the internal review and approval process. Once it's internally approved, it is submitted to Health Canada for review and approval. And while awaiting the approval of this new indication, a safety update comes in. This safety update must be added to the approved XML PM, so we create a variant or a second branch document of it, which you can see as a variant 2 on my screen. We add the safety information in variant 2, and this file then undergoes the internal review and approval process. Once it's internally approved, it is also submitted to Health Canada for review. The document with the safety update is approved by Health Canada promptly, making it the new approved version. So we replace the old base version with this new approved variant 2 document. However, this means that the variant 1 document with the new indication that is at the health authority now contains out-of-date safety information. Thus, we merge the updated base document into the variant 1 so that the variant 1 document is fully up to date. The updated variant 1 document is then sent to the health authority. Health Canada then verifies and approves the new version of the variant 1 document containing the indication information. With this version of variant 1 document approved, the variant 1 document, which contains the updated safety information and the new indication information, now replaces the base document. The result is that all the information in the base document is approved in a time and labor efficient manner. All of this is possible by making use of the structure of the XML PM document in Alice. The base mapping that's used in each of the structured sections of the documents allow us to easily merge them together. Our next topic is translation management. Our content management system helps manage the relationships and track the changes between translations and also helps automate the translation process. There are numerous benefits to structure when it comes to translation management. For example, when you have authored one language of your document, you can create and relate the other language document to it within Alice. This relationship aids in synchronizing and managing the documents. If the documents have standard headings, as XML PM documents do, these are automatically translated based on the values from the authorized controlled vocabularies. As the metadata from both language versions should be equivalent, Alice can both copy the metadata from one language version to the other and also verify that the metadata of the language versions are in alignment. Submissions of the language versions are also managed within Alice with reminders to submit translated versions after the first has been submitted. Finally, one of the biggest benefits is content alignment, making sure that all updates made to the first language document are included in the other language document. This also includes flagging new sections that are added to one language and not the other. The translation dashboard in Alice is designed for easy creation and management of document translations. The document that you author in one language can be used to create a new translation document in another language. This new translated document is logically grouped with the base language document, and the metadata of the structured documents allows Alice to keep track and manage this relationship. For example, on my screen, I currently have an English document selected. If you look at the relationship pane, it shows no relationship. However, if we then create a French translation document, a package is created in the translation dashboard with the new French document. Now, if we look at the relationship pane again, we see that Alice is tracking the link between these two documents, providing a convenient way to locate and manage which documents require an update when the related document has been changed. Furthermore, because of the structured content and metadata in the original document, The standard text in the headings of the English document has been automatically pre-translated to the Health Canada approved standard text in the headings of the other language. This is true of all controlled vocabulary, such as dosage forms, therapeutic classification, etc. So if we dig a little deeper, we can see that the metadata is aligned between the two documents. In this example, we're looking at the product data information and see that the new French document displays the same information as the English document, but with the text found in the mapped controlled vocabulary for the translation. One of the issues with having different language versions of a file is managing the changes between them. When one language version has been changed, how can we easily find where the changes are? How can we ensure that both language documents contain the same sections? And how can structured documents be translated? In Alice, we have the update translation process to manage this. Let's suppose we have two XML PMs, one in each language, that were last submitted to Health Canada. Changes to the product require the XML PMs to be updated and the new version to be reviewed and approved by Health Canada. The changes will be made in one document, the English version in this case. The Word document will then go through the entire life cycle until it has been approved by Health Canada. After it has been authored and approved, the French version then becomes out of date. To update the French translation, the Update Translation feature in Alice directly includes the English changes as comments in the French document, mapping them to the correct section. Let's pause for a moment here so we can take a look at how these updates actually appear within these two documents. On the left is the English document that we have made our changes to. These changes were made and tracked with Word's Track Changes feature. On the right is the French document, which has had the English changes directly included as comments. And they are mapped to the same section due to structure. Also of note, any new sections that were added to the English document are included in the French document, accompanied by a comment that indicates that this is a new section in our base. Similarly, if a section is removed from the English document, there is a comment in the French indicating its removal from the base. This process automates the task of marking up the translated document so that it's ready to be sent to a translator to have the updated sections translated. This document can then be exported as a plain Word document and sent to a translator who can edit it with just a copy of Word. No IFRI license is required. The translator can then directly enter the translated text into the specified section of the document and send it back. When the translated document is imported back into Alice, the system relinks the appropriate section structure to the document. This then allows it to be validated, complete the life cycle, and be submitted to Health Canada as a structured XML PM document. And thus, our French document has been fully translated and is automatically linked to the latest version of the English base document. Now, to further validate the content in both documents, we can also generate a side-by-side report using the translation dashboard. The side-by-side report is a two-column document with the content from the base document in the left-hand column and the content of the translation document in the right-hand column. The use of structure allows us to align sections so we can easily review the differences. The side-by-side reports can be shared with and used by anyone regardless of whether they have access to the system or not. I'd like to hand it over back to Jacqueline, who will now discuss the latest updates from Health Canada. Jacqueline, over to you.
Thank you, Amin. So yes, the final topic, and the one you've all been waiting for, I think, is updates that Health Canada has announced, including the start date for Phase 2 of the XML PM implementation. We've received a number of new and interesting updates from Health Canada, and we'd like to share them with you. And they are updates to the way you need to enter dates in order to pass validation and have the style sheet render them correctly, the Phase 2 start date, and the support that Health Canada is going to provide as you transition from your legacy documents to XML PM. The product details section, or rendered XML file, was displayed at the top of the page in the previous style sheet layout, with the title page section following it. In the new style sheet layout, the product details section has been relocated to the end of the layout. And this is so the title page will display first. The date format on the title page has been updated in order to ensure the consistent formatting of both the date of initial approval, or authorization rather, and the date of revision. And the date needs to be inserted as YYY MMDD. The style sheet will then render the date to display using the Government of Canada full date standards. Dates for English documents are displayed as month, day, year, while dates for French documents are displayed as jour, mois, année. On June the 14th, 2021, which is just next week, Health Canada's XML PM implementation is going to be entering Phase 2. Phase 2 launches XML PM into full production. At launch, the new validation rules go into effect, and the new controlled vocabulary website was going to be available. Please note, submissions of XML PMs are still voluntary during Phase 2. Mandatory submissions begin in Phase 3, and the current date for Phase 3 is still yet to be decided. Health Canada recognizes that the transition from legacy Product Monographs into the 2020 format, where the sections and content don't always line up, will be challenging. On the Phase 2 notice that was published on May the 28th, they announced that they were working on a strategic approach to support the transition of all Product Monographs into the XML format. What this means is that Health Canada will be providing guidance on transitioning your legacy Product Monographs, which don't follow the 2020 template structure and authoring guidance, into the 2020 XML PM format. And this benefits both the pharmas and Health Canada because it promotes consistency and it will simplify the review process. They've indicated to us that they're working on concrete directions for this transition, and there's going to be a lot of communication over the next little while on the strategy that they're working on. We're now ready to move on to the Q&A portion of our session, so if you haven't already sent in your questions, then please feel free to do so now using the WebEx chat panel or the WebEx Q&A panel. And also, if you're watching the recording of this presentation and you want to send us a question, please contact our i4i support team at support@i4i.com.
Thank you, Amin and Jacqueline. We'll pause here for a couple minutes to receive your questions, and we'll be back with the Q&A session shortly.
We've just had our first question, which was in the chat earlier, and maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't, but it was the previous webinar that was just mentioned recorded? And yes, it was. We do record all of our webinars, and they're available on our YouTube channel.
So we received a question about the drug product database website. And the question being asked is, have the DPD website being updated to show the XML PMs. I believe that Health Canada is currently working on updating the DPD to accommodate XML PMs, but so far we have seen the 2020 Product Monographs, but not the XML PMs yet. But we do have XML PM sample files that Health Canada released.
We have another question. Does Alice replace the application A4L, or is it the same? Excellent question. We have A4L Professional, which is our desktop application that allows you to edit and author your XML PMs and publish them into the XML PM format to submit to Health Canada. Alice is actually a combination of A4L Professional and Alice combined, which is A4L Enterprise. So it doesn't, I suppose the combination of Alice and A4L Professional equals our enterprise solution. I hope that made sense.
Okay, and we have a question about the translation feature. Will the translators require the software installed on the system in order to work with the translation documents? So the answer to that is no. If the translators do not have access to Alice, they will still be able to update the or translate the base language document to the secondary language. And to support that, we have the update translation feature, we have the import-export feature available, and then we also have the side-by-side report generation feature, which can all be used to accommodate external translators in Alice. Okay, we have another question regarding the DPD. Can the XML PM be downloaded as PDF or Word once published on DPD? So once the XML PM is available, you would be able to download the XML file, which can then be previewed in the style sheet. And once it's in style sheet, it can be rendered to a PDF. However, I'm not sure whether there will be a link to the direct PDF or Word format on the DPD. So more updates on that to come shortly, hopefully.
And we have a question about when we expect Phase 2 to end. Excellent question. I did talk to Health Canada last week, and I know that they are really pushing for this to move along. That's one of the reasons that when I mentioned earlier that they're going to be supporting pharmas when they're transitioning their legacy documents into the 2020 format and to XML PM. That's the reason they're doing it, is because they really are pushing for this XML format to be there. So I don't have an expected date because, of course, they're not going to tell us that until they know the date, but I expect it to be the end of this year, before the end of this year, definitely. We received a question about, is it required to send the first XML PM for validation to Health Canada, or can it just be included in our submission? We're not 100% sure on that. We'll try to find that out for you, but we think that you validate it once it's included in the submission. But let us get back to you on that one. And another question here. According to the guidance document, step 1 is hold the technical pre-submission consultation. Is this step required in Phase 2? No, as far as I know, it is not required in Phase 2. I think that Phase 1, that first step with the consultation, there was a lot of back and forth while Health Canada was sort of ironing things out. So in Phase 2, I don't believe that the technical pre-submission consultation is no longer required. And somebody's asking if we can share the link to access all the recordings. Yes, we can do that. We will send that out to everybody. Somebody's asking, they saw that on one of the slides we mentioned there was a new controlled vocabulary website, and they're wanting the link to that site. I would love to have the link to that site. I'd love to see it, but it's not actually available yet. That won't be going live until the 14th, which I think is next Wednesday. No, I think it's Monday. It's Monday. So on Monday, the link will be available. We can attach that as well, or we can send that out to people as well.
Okay, so I see a question in the chat. Cross-licensing files can be converted to XML template, or they have to wait for the original manufacturer to convert their PM, the parent file. Thank you for your question. So if the original manufacturer has moved to the 2020 PM format and not the XML PM, I believe you can still migrate to the XML PM format.
Somebody's asking if we can demonstrate how the published XML can be opened using the style sheet. We can't demonstrate that now, I'm sorry to say. In our tool, if you want to have a demo of our tool, we could definitely show you how to view your XML PMs using the style sheet.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate your attendance today. We did have a couple of other questions. We'll follow up with people directly. Otherwise, please look for our follow-up email with a link to the recording and our YouTube website where you can view previous recordings of our webinars as well. If you have any questions, please email support@ifri.com, and we'd be happy to help. Thank you again. Bye now.
Thank you, everyone.